Hope we're all doing well. Today is Thursday, the 5th of March, and today I'll be talking about the first day of coaching with my new client, Giacomo. And so, as you can see by the title, my client Giacomo got four numbers today. Now, quick note, when I say today, I really mean yesterday. I was meant to do this live stream at the end of the day yesterday, but Giacomo and I, we kind of went through Rome in the evening to explore the sort of city in the nighttime and got some food and got some ice cream. So we were chilling just the two of us. So I got back a little bit later, and yeah, I just planned the live stream, did a bit of meditation, and then literally kind of passed out because I was very tired. But here we are, giving a quick recap since it's still fresh in my mind. And it was a really rock star day. And so I'll give a bit of context to who Giacomo is. So Giacomo is an American guy. He's in his early 20s, and yeah, he works in advertisement. And Giacomo was coached a while back, but he wanted to get some more coaching, and he told me that he wanted to reach another level. And so that's exactly what we did. And so he reached out to me, and I said, perfect, I'll be in Rome anyway, so you can meet me out in Rome. And so that was the pretext behind why we linked up, why we're working together. And yeah, it was great. So as usual, I meet my clients in the core part of the city. And so we met up by one of the core attractions in Rome. It's called like Trevi Fountain, very nice, big, I guess, ancient Rome sculpture, very, very big, lots of tourists there. And so we met up there, finally got to see each other face to face. I embraced him, dapped him up. We just caught up on our, how we've been doing in Rome recently. And yeah, we went to the Starbucks just to sit down, have a coffee, have a drink, and talk about what the intention was for the day. And so prior to Giacomo and me linking up here in Rome, we'd been having a few virtual calls prior to meeting up. And so I would, have a weekly call with him where he would, talk about, his fears, what he hopes to get out of this immersion, and ultimately what he really wants to elevate in terms of his own approach, because he's already approached, right? And so he just wanted better results. And so based on that, I told him, look, Giacomo, today the focus is just to stay in conversation as long as possible, because he told me that he struggled to be in conversations for long, and even when he was in those conversations, the quality of the conversations weren't great. So he was asking a lot of questions, or he felt as if he'd run out of things to say, and that threw him off in the conversation. And so I told him that's the focus for today, right? I'm going to obviously mic you up. I'll be filming you. I'll be there in your corner, and I'll be listening to what you're going to say. And I will help you tweak what you need in order to feel a lot more comfortable in these conversations. And so he nodded his head. He said, perfect, that's exactly what I need. And another aspect that I wanted to focus on as well was how he was stopping the girl. So I just wanted him to stop the girl a bit more, let's say, face to face, because he told me that sometimes he feels like he's not talking to the girl head on. So yeah, I told him, look, let's try and be more polarizing in terms of how we position ourselves. And so, of course, I've never seen him approach, so I wanted to see him approach before I even gave him feedback, right? And so we go outside, and good thing about Giacomo is he took action pretty quickly, right? I spot the girl, he goes right in. In fact, there were moments where he actually said, oh, do you think I should go for her? And I was like, oh, if you like her, yeah, sure enough. And so, he took that initiative as well, which is always great. And the first few approaches were blowouts. Some of the girls stopped, some didn't. And, one thing I told Giacomo was, since he's a beginner, he would benefit from just going in for the approach as soon as possible, just to warm himself up, right? Just to get in that state. And so it's important to warm yourself up and to get yourself to that more socially free, socially vibrational state where you're no longer too much in your head. You're a bit more flow. You're a bit more in a flow state. You're feeling a lot more confident, and you're more acclimatized to the environment. And oh, what the hell was that? Sorry, I just heard a really weird noise, and it sounded like a snake. Anyway, sorry guys, that just really threw me off. I think it was just my band. My Kenyan band was like moving across the table. Anyway, what was I saying before I got interrupted? Oh yeah, so I told him, look, yeah, just try and get into state. These first few approaches, they're just kind of throwaway, right? And to be fair, you might get into a conversation on your first approach. That can always happen. But for him specifically, I could tell that he just needed to warm up and get into the flow. And so that's what he did. And so he was feeling himself a bit more after 3-4 approaches. And then eventually we made our way towards like this main street, or this big main street in Rome, where it's like pretty big, shops on either side, lots of people, but plenty of space to approach. No cars there as well, so it's not as noisy as the main roads. And he started to get into conversations, right? And so now I finally had some material to listen to how he sounded. And I immediately noticed that he was asking lots of questions, and he was going through the conversation pretty quickly, and then he would blank. I could tell that he was afraid of blanking, so instead of just sitting in that silence, he would just ask another question. And after that happened twice in a few conversations, I pulled him aside on a side street, and I said, okay, I've been listening into the conversations now, and I can tell that you're afraid of blanking, which is fine, right? So you've already told me that that's something that's a sort of issue for you. And so what we need to understand is, one, we want to almost own the blank, especially at the beginning, because we can't strive for perfection this early on. And so blanking is a normal part of the process. And so I told Giacomo, look, it's okay to be in that position where you've spoken to the girl for a few minutes. She seems to be quite interested. You can just say and call it out. Say, yeah, sorry, I just forgot what to say. And just let her respond. And owning that emotion, being a little bit, not even a little bit, being honest, and just owning the fact that there's this awkward moment, but doing it with a smile on your face rather than seeing it as this big deal, will actually be received pretty well from most girls, especially if she's already been stood there for a few minutes, right? At this point, he'd only had, like 2-minute conversations. And so we were really striving for 5 minutes plus. But at the very least, the girl was stood there talking to him. And so I told him, look, just call it out. It's okay to call it out. You can look a little bit silly. If anything, sometimes girls don't like the guy who's always too smooth, right? Like, it's okay to just own your state, own the moment, and have a smile on your face. And so he understood that. So I said, it might benefit you if you really do blank and you literally have nothing to say, then just say that, right? And she'll probably giggle and say, it's okay. And then funnily enough, what happens is you feel a lot more calm because you realize, oh, I blanked, but she didn't call me a piece of shit. Oh, I blanked, but she didn't run away. Oh, I blanked, but she didn't think I was an incompetent buffoon and she just walked away and, said deuces. No, she stood there, she laughed, and she understood. And maybe that put me more in her good graces. Maybe she respected me even more for that. So that was the first point I made to him. And then when it came to actually figuring out what to say, I told Giacomo, look, a lot of the time we're in these conversations and yes, we're a little bit nervous, but we're almost looking at the conversation like a bridge, and the guy or Giacomo is here on this side of the bridge and the girl is on this side of the bridge. And we're trying to figure out a way to connect ourselves here, right? To get across to her side. And a lot of the time, we, in a weird way, subconsciously, it's not even like a level bridge, it's like a bit of an uphill bridge. So we feel like we have to work extra hard to find some sort of rapport or build some sort of connection. But in reality, these women, these girls, they're just human, right? They have the same things that we have. They have the same fears, worries, joys, dreams, aspirations. They work just like we work. They go on holidays just like we go on holidays. They have their hobbies, they have their friends, they have their family. They like to shop, right? They like to do stuff in their free time. And so the point is, we have a lot more in common than we think. The only difference is she's just got a nice ass, and she's got a nice rack, and she's got a nice body, and she's cute and dainty, and she's this girl who makes us feel a certain type of way, and we really want to take her out on a date. And so there's this whole sexual romantic element attached to that. But if you just strip all of that away, we're just talking to a human being. And so the conversation should just be like how Giacomo talks to me. I mean, Giacomo was talking to me on the street, we're having a laugh, we're bantering. He's making fun of my UK slang, I'm making fun of his Toronto slang. And and I'm making fun of his East American slang, and it's like, okay, like what's that about, right? And I'm kind of like, okay, he's making fun of my slang because he's from the East Coast. So I'm thinking, okay, like we're gonna have like this banter, and I'm thinking, why can't you do that with the girl? Why can't you talk like that with the girl, right? And then I realized, oh, okay, it's because he's just nervous. He doesn't quite know how to navigate that conversation, and so we're doing that. But then I told him, look, okay, in the way that you talk to me, just kind of have a similar vibe with her, right? Tease her a bit, pull her arm a little bit, and don't take it too seriously. And so that's what we did, right? And so I told him, look, you can just, instead of asking lots of questions, just talk about yourself, right? Talk about yourself, Give her more information about what you do, where you live, the reason you're here. And let her now respond to that, interject to that, right? Because, you're a pretty sound guy, so you should believe in yourself, right? And so, I told him, look, just give your opinions on what she says. So if she says, I'm from this country, instead of asking another question, just give an opinion about what you think about that country, right? And so essentially what I was trying to do was steer Giacomo away from asking too many questions and getting him to talk a bit more about himself, but to also just showcase his own opinions, his own personality, and let the girl respond accordingly. Because if she doesn't want to talk to you because of that, then you have your answer, right? She's not interested. And so this was great because I could see him nodding his head, and he was like, okay, yeah, that's a really good point. I really understand that. Thank you for that. And so he nodded, we kept it pushing, and then he got into more conversations, and he immediately started implementing my feedback, right? And that's when he got his first number. I think she was like an Iranian girl, and they were talking for like, I think it must have been 5 minutes. Oh no, it was like a 4-minute conversation, so not the longest, but at the very least, he blanked and he allowed the silence to sit. And I remember he came back to me and he said, "Did you notice that I just let the silence sit?" And I was like, "Yeah, great, exactly, right. Just hold that tension. It's okay. You can handle it." And then we kept on going. And to be fair, he got her number. And I should also mention that of the 4 numbers that he got, 3 have responded, and one of them, which I'll get to the end of the live stream, like she's definitely like probably down to see him, so they'll probably link up at some point. But yeah, so we're having this back and forth, whatever, and then we keep on going. He's had that conversation, and we keep going down the street, and then he gets a few more blowouts, and then he had one blowout at the end of the, let's say, street by the plaza, where it was a more brutal, rough blowout. The girl didn't really stop for him. She blanked him. She kind of went nah, and then she walked off and hurried off. And I could tell that kind of affected him. But at the same time, Giacomo was a pretty good action taker, and so I thought, no, I can push him in for more. And even though he was down, even though he didn't really want to approach, I could tell that he wanted to really take his foot off the gas a little bit. I said, nah, look, let's just do a few more. You never know who's around the corner. And so guess what? We're walking around the plaza. It's a bit more quiet in this area. There's still lots of people, but it's not as like hectic in terms of the people walking up and down, with like a quick pace. And I spot some girl and I say, go approach her. And he goes, stops her well, and they, they have a 7-minute conversation. He's implementing my feedback. He's talking about himself. He's talking about what he does for work. He's talking. I think she was Iranian, and so he's talking about that whole situation, but not in a serious way. And she's loving it. She's asking him questions now because he actually gave her time to invest in the conversation, and so they're having this nice back and forth, and it was great, right? Because now I could see that he was doing exactly what I told him to do. And this is, he came back to me, big smile. I said, well done, man. That's great. That must have been one of your best conversations. And he said, yeah, that's the longest conversation I've ever had, ever, right? And so I'm like, God, good. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So you are capable. You just need to go about it in the right way. And so because he's coachable, because he has a student's mindset, he reaped the reward. And so he got her number. They said that they were going to maybe set up some coffee later. And yeah, that's all that happened. And so Also, by the way, it's funny because I was just looking at something here. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. And then yeah, he was obviously super happy about it, super gassed. And I made the point to him, look, every approach is independent, right? Every single approach is independent. And so, yeah, it's really important to not get too bogged down by the blowouts, because if you allow it to affect you too much, then it could prevent you from going out and meeting the girl who's at break now. So we go to McDonald's, sit down. We don't actually buy McDonald's because we're healthy. We just go there because free Wi-Fi, lots of seating, etc. And so he goes and takes a piss, comes back, and then I've got my laptop out. I'm already looking at the footage because I really want to dial in on what he's saying in these conversations, because I like to give credit where credit is due when my clients and my students are performing well, when they're implementing my feedback. And so after those approaches, those conversations that Giacomo had, I gave him credit where it was due, right? Because he was doing what we intended to do, which was to stay in the conversation as long as possible. And he had like I said, a 7-minute conversation with that Iranian girl, or the second Iranian girl. And so even though that was the case, I was listening very, very intently to what Giacomo was sounding like. And I noticed that there was just some areas in his language and his tone that weren't quite where they need to be. And so I sit him down and I say, look, credit where credit is due. Well done for putting my feedback into practice. However, I can tell that you're sounding very needy in these opens and in these conversations. The energy is a bit too, gay best friend type of vibe. And also there were points where when he was asking the girl if she spoke English or if she would, if she could hear him, his voice was like going up in inflection and all this sort of stuff. And part of it was nerves, which I acknowledged, right? But I could tell that there was just a bit of neediness there. And so I called it out. I told him, look, you're not going to like what I say, right? But I'm here to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And so I told him, mate, you sound needy. You sound a bit too agreeable at times. And, there's nothing wrong with laughing at jokes, laughing at things that the girl says. But there were points where clearly, maybe Giacomo was laughing a bit too excessively, right? Because, again, just trying to, let's say, appease to the girl. And so he was, I think he was a little bit taken aback that I just sort of called it out, but he understood, right? I told him, look, this is just a normal part of the process. I was the same when I had my conversations. And sometimes when I'm in front of a really attractive girl, sometimes it comes out a little bit. I notice it in myself, right? And so you just have to, it just takes reps and repetition. But the first step is recognizing it, calling it out, right? And so you can imagine if Giacomo wasn't, if I wasn't with him, maybe then he wouldn't have seen it, or if he hadn't been in enough conversations at this point, then he wouldn't have really understood it or been able to identify it. And so we wrap it up at McDonald's, at Mackey's. I'm like, okay, second half of the day, we're going to go out for just 1 more hour. Let's try and keep it condensed. Let's just go in for reps, implement the feedback. And when you do get in conversations, if you do, because we can't guarantee it, but if you do get into a nice conversation with a girl who's clearly interested, then implement my feedback. And so this is when the magic happened. We go back outside. He does a few approaches, a few blowouts. And then, boom, girl walks past. I say, Giacomo, do you like her? And he didn't even say anything. He just turned around and went because he knew he liked her, right? And he goes, and the stop was really good. And she turned out to be Italian, and they spoke for literally 9 minutes, just under 10 minutes. And it's the longest convo he's ever had. Again, so he kept breaking barriers. He kept breaking barriers as the day went on. First, it was a 4-minute convo. Then it was the 7-minute convo, which was his highest at that point. And then now it's like a 9-10 minute convo. And yeah, this convo was great though. This was his best because it was not just the longest, but it was way more polarizing, right? He was owning that masculine assertive energy that I was telling him about that he has, right? He was integrating it with his, let's say, more fun personality. And, there was a point where, because she had a camera, and so he asked her about that, and they were talking about photography, and then he was like, yeah, you should show me your photos. And then she offered to do it, and then she she was like standing right next to him, and they were touching each other. And then I think she had like a tattoo on her hand, or maybe like a henna print. And, he was like touching her and being like, yeah, so like, what's that? And it was obviously all natural, right? Because they were feeling each other, right? And so he felt comfortable, she felt comfortable. There was this chemistry, and I was just, obviously I was quite far away. just hearing it all, but it was so nice to hear because I was like, finally, he's got a chance, he's had a chance to implement the feedback, and he's done it, and he's done it in spectacular fashion. And so I'm thinking, well done, Giacomo. And so he was teasing her as well, and yeah, they were just having a great back and forth, and he was a lot more reserved, and yeah, that sort of gay best friend energy wasn't there. And so when he came back to me, big smile, I gassed him up. I was like, bro, you've got the sauce now. Yeah, even I could tell that he was feeling himself. He had a bit of a bounce when he was walking away, almost like wheeling away in celebration, like he just scored a last minute winner at the Stadium Olimpico for Roma. And yeah, now he was really happy. And yeah, I just told him, look, bro, that is exactly what I've been looking for. And I told you that you have it. You just have to remove the layers that are preventing you from accessing that more confident part of yourself. And I could tell that this was a big positive reference experience for him because, again, 9-minute convo, right? Didn't blank. He led the conversation, closed for details, got the number, told her, yeah, he wants to take her out at some point, and he's still texting her now, and I imagine they'll see each other before the end of the week if he wants to. But he's got multiple numbers now, right? So he's got I think he got 4, but 3 of them responded. So it's up to him in terms of who he wants to see. But yeah, most importantly, it's just that I was proud that he went in, and proud that he got that reward for just taking action and implementing on feedback. Because that's it, right? Because some people can be hard-headed and they don't want to take the feedback, and their egos are too big, and they just keep doing the same thing, making the same mistakes. But Giacomo was self-aware enough and open-minded enough to allow me to coach him in that way, and he reaped the reward. And so, yeah, obviously we were quite happy. I said, look, let's end on a high, and let's just go get some food because we'd been out for a bit. So we got some nice Italian burgers, which Giacomo was really kind to pay for. So yeah, shout out to him. Very, very nice of him. And then we kept on walking through Rome just to explore the city at nighttime. And yeah, we realized that it's actually pretty nice and well lit and busy in the evening. So, I think one thing that I haven't really done yet is approach in the evening until yesterday. So yesterday I was like, all right, now let me, sort of, as me and Giacomo are talking, and exploring the city, let me do a few approaches here and there just to show him how I handle the blowouts or how I handle the conversations. And yeah, he could see that, I was just able to get in conversation. I mean, I think I probably stopped most of the girls. If let's say I did like 8 approaches, I stopped like 7 of them, had conversations with like 6 of them. And yeah, he was just like seeing how I went about that process. But I got blown out too, right? And he saw me get blown out one time. I just stood there and I just smiled and like absorbed everything. And he could see that I was pretty much detached from all of it. And then yeah, we got some gelato ice cream for a bit, ate that. And then yeah, we just kept on chatting, getting to know each other a little bit more. And yeah, and then we called it a day. But yeah, no, that was it, and it's great, I'm coaching different guys from different places, right? Coaching a guy from the UK Midlands, coaching a guy from America, it's like, I'm noticing the same pattern, which is if you're able and willing to listen to feedback, then you'll do well, right? If you just keep on putting in the reps, keep on believing in yourself, even when you feel a little bit down, then yeah, the universe will reward you. And so yeah, that's it. Day 1 recap. So yeah, so far so good, great start. And yeah, I can't wait to do the rest of it. I'm gonna get ready for the second day. And then yeah, I'll give you guys another update. But until then, peace out.